We have a very special evening tonight. His Eminence Cardinal Justi Rigali is with us.
What I agreed to speak to you about tonight was to introduce you a little bit into a world that I lived in for 30 years in Rome, just to share with you a couple of experiences that will show you the humanity of three people in particular: Paul VI, John Paul I, Pope for 33 days, and John Paul II. I became the director of the English language section of the Pope's Secretariat, which meant that this particular section of his office had everything to do with the English language, and therefore with the United States, and therefore with many other English-speaking countries throughout the world. But I also had a particular privilege, and my privilege was to be the English language translator for Pope Paul VI. I was leaving the Pope's presence. I was saying, "Good night, Holy Father," and he stopped me. And I think you'll see the extraordinary depth of this experience. He stopped me and he said to me, "How is Paul?" Paul was my brother. And sometime previously, I had asked the Pope to remember Paul in his prayers. My brother had 12 children. He was dying of cancer. And it was the last days. He was suffering enormously. But here's the Pope, who had registered my plea, my request to remember my brother Paul. In a sense, it was easy for him to remember. It was his name. But that he would take the time to say, "How is Paul?" The first question. How is his wife holding up? How are the children doing? And then number 4, what can I do for Paul? It made a great, great difference. I spoke to his wife right after I called her on the phone to let her know that the Pope himself was interested in her husband, my brother, the children's father, as he approached death. I would like to introduce you to this second friend of mine. His name was John Paul I. He was elected on August the 26th, 1978. It turned out that his role was to be Pope only for 33 days. For just 33 days. The very last day of his life, he was with a group of bishops from the Philippines. It was a very big group. One by one, this group of bishops went out of the room. And then finally, I was there alone with him. It was the last hour. And he said to me, on that occasion, he said to me, "You have a lot of work to do in your office." And he says, "Here I disturb you by having you come into my office and work with me translating for my guests." And of course I said, "Holy Father, it's a great honor to come and work with you." And with that, he smiled and he winked at me, and he says, after having told me he was sorry to disturb me, he says, "Thank you, disturbed Monsignor." And you got it right. It has a double meaning in Italian and a double meaning in English. Thank you, disturbed Monsignor. But about 10 hours after he had thanked me, the disturbed Monsignor, he was dead. And once again, the process began to find a new shepherd for the church. John Paul II came on the scene then. He was elected Pope on October the 16th, 1978. As I told you, I was on the balcony. And this is the third Pope that I was privileged not only to know, but to work for. Pope John the 23rd, I was in Rome, but I did not work for him. But Paul the Sixth, yes. John Paul the First, yes. And now John Paul the Second, for many, many years. But Galway Bay is where he met the young people of Ireland. And then later on, I would be with him when he would meet the young people of India, when he would meet the young people of New Zealand, when he would meet the young people of the United States, the young people of Canada, the young people in Nigeria, etc. But that first meeting, everything was present there. His whole style was there. And he gave this talk to the young people of Ireland. There were 400,000 people at Galway Bay. He said, "Young people of Ireland, I love you." And that was John Paul II. That was the person, John Paul II. What you saw was what you got. There was absolutely no artificiality. There was nothing false. It was John Paul II. It was pure love, but it was a lot of challenge. It was a lot of challenge. And he could do it, and the young people would respond. After Benedict was elected, and I was one of the 115 cardinals that elected him, after he was elected, there was a very beautiful ceremony. The Pope takes his place in the Sistine Chapel. You know, there's this magnificent fresco by Michelangelo, The Last Judgment, and it put the fear of God into anybody. As I went up, I knelt before the Pope, profession of faith, promise of obedience. As I was getting up, you know what he said to me? 40 minutes after he's elected Pope, how he has time to worry about these inconsequential things. He says to me, "Happy birthday." It was my birthday. But can you imagine having nothing to think about as the new Pope than to wish happy birthday to this insignificant cardinal from Philadelphia. So anyway, that brings us into this new pontificate, but I wanted to restrict my comments to those other three popes who were my friends, who were the people that helped form me, and I was tremendously honored to serve them, to be near them, and to be uplifted by them. So anyway, that was my world for 30 years. Just wanted to share it with you. Hope you found some interest in it. God bless you.